On January 7, 1985, German-Canadian publisher Ernst Zündel was put on trial in Toronto for having published the pamphlet, Did 6 Million Really Die?
I'm innocent. I consider this just one more step in this struggle to have the Germans rehabilitated. I'm a German. I don't think that the Germans killed 6 million Jews.
Zündel was greeted at the courthouse by members of the Jewish Defense League who booed and hissed at him, shouted obscenities and spat at him in the halls of Old City Hall. Zündel appeared in court today wearing a hard hat and a bulletproof vest.
We have had lots of bomb threats and death threats and assassination threats.
Early this morning, there was an explosion at the home of Toronto publisher Ernst Zündel. Metro police believe a pipe bomb is behind the blast.
This is Zündel's message. There were no gas chambers in Nazi concentration camps. There was no mass murder of European Jews. The Holocaust is a hoax, dreamed up after the Second World War by Zionists who wanted war reparation, money to establish the State of Israel.
I hope you and others are prepared to hear different points of view on that question, did 6 million really die? I think it's a question you should be free to ask. I think it's a question you should be open to hearing new evidence on.
The most favorite topics of all the Jews that I've ever heard discuss this with me on radio talk shows. The burning of human flesh, this is always comes up, you know. The flames of the fire ovens and the billowing smoke. And if you look at all the Holocaust movies from The Wall on to the Holocaust serial itself, you hear this somber, nerve-jangling music. Smoke comes out of the square chimney. Every one of you has seen it 1,000 times, you know. And today, in a court of law, with the tight rules of evidence that you can apply in a court of law, demolish that lie.
He finally admitted today that all he learned about gas chambers was kids' guessing games.
I think a lot of truths are coming out. A lot of myths are being dispelled.
The lawyer representing Ernst Zündel today began challenging some of the testimony given this week by an expert on the Holocaust.
The Crown's expert witness, Dr. Raul Hilberg, was back on the stand today, where he was called to defend many of the conclusions he's made on the Holocaust during 40 years of research.
Defense lawyer Doug Christie questioned the fact that the professor quoted a former SS officer 10 times in a book the professor wrote about the Holocaust. Christie said the officer made what the lawyer called incredible claims, like claiming that Hitler witnessed some gassings and that 25 million Jews were killed by the Germans. Professor Hilberg admitted he left out the officer's incredible points in his book.
Defense lawyer Doug Christie asked Dr. Hilberg how he came to the belief that Adolf Hitler personally issued the annihilation order. The doctor replied, Hitler's order was verbal, and thus no one knows the correct wording. It's one of the gaps in history, Hilberg said.
Can you believe that, huh? Yes, so I think that it says here, a Holocaust expert yesterday admitted at the Ernst Zündel trial that some of his facts on gas chambers came from a man who spoke pure nonsense.
Mr. Christie then asked for one single scientific report indicating that there were gas chambers.
A recognized expert on the Holocaust today admitted there is no single report that shows the existence of gas chambers in Nazi concentration camps.
Mr. Zündel's lawyer claimed that expert witness Dr. Raul Hilberg had published a book on the Holocaust using material from a former Auschwitz commandant who had been beaten and whipped. Dr. Hilberg defended this use, saying that this particular man was an important witness.
Rudolf Vrba, an escapee from Auschwitz, has testified with uncanny precision about what went on in the death camp. Today, the lawyer for Ernst Zündel tested that memory. Doug Christie challenged a memoir that Vrba wrote in 1964, which said, among other things, that Auschwitz had a killing capacity of 12,000 a day. This is twice what Vrba had reported to authorities after his escape in 1944. Vrba admitted that incidents in the book were dramatized. He called it an artistic picture of an event. Doug Christie read from Vrba's 1964 death camp memoirs called I Cannot Forgive. Among the anecdotes, a human gassing demonstration for SS Chief Heinrich Himmler. Pressed about the book's accuracy, Vrba said it was a work of literature rather than a history book.
Faurisson recalled a visit to Auschwitz when he ran his finger across the smokestack of a crematorium and found no soot. His investigation revealed that the crematorium was a reconstruction, not the original.
It's impossible to sustain any more of these fantastic figures. There is not even the slightest proof of even one gas chamber. Faurisson testified he believed the casualty figures ranged between 200,000 and 350,000. He quoted his source for that estimate as the International Tracing Service, a group that tries to track down Jews who were displaced during the war.
He said rumors and anti-German propaganda led to what he calls the great historical lie that 6 million Jews died. Griffiths, who committed this fraud? Faurisson, the State of Israel and international Zionists. Griffiths, for what purpose? Faurisson said for the financial remuneration the German government was forced to pay.
That a gas chamber that is necessary to kill a man cannot just be any old room. That the consequences of gassing with Zyklon B are such that you cannot do it in the gas chambers alleged at Auschwitz-Birkenau.
Meanwhile, a defense witness, Dietlib Felderer of Sweden, he said that in his 27 visits to Auschwitz in recent years, he found an Olympic-sized swimming pool, a banquet room, a sauna, even a dance hall where prisoners' orchestras played for inmates. He described a crematorium as a Hollywood stage place, a fake.
Later, another defense witness, Dr. William Lindsay, an American industrial chemist, took the stand.
Dr. Lindsay said what a dangerous gas Zyklon B was and how carefully it had to be handled. Defense counsel Doug Christie then mentioned an earlier witness who had claimed to have handled corpses shortly after the victims had been gassed. Dr. Lindsay said this was highly unlikely. Asked by Mr. Christie about mass gassings, Dr. Lindsay said it was impossible for it to have happened the way it's described. No one was willfully killed with Zyklon B in this manner. Dr. Lindsay also suggested that earlier testimony concerning flames day and night shooting out of crematoria chimneys was wrong. He said this would cause a brick-and-mortar chimney to fall apart.
Ernst Zündel took the stand in his own defense today as the trial entered its final stages.
Ernst Zündel portrayed himself today as a man fighting for the good name of Germans. And part of that fight is the denial of the Holocaust. The jury in the trial has seen this military film alleging that a shower at Dachau was used to gas Jews with Zyklon B gas. Zündel said that most authorities, including officials at Dachau today, now say that the gas chamber was never used. It took 20 years, he said, to admit that Dachau, Buchenwald, and Bergen-Belsen did not have gas chambers. In time, the world would have to admit that Auschwitz and other eastern camps also did not use gas for human extermination. Zündel testified that the high death toll at camps like Dachau was mostly due to typhus, and those epidemics came late in the war. There were no active gas chambers for humans, he said.
Zündel told the jury that we must now realize that every government manipulates information and has censorship in times of war.
Zündel said the Holocaust is like a rumor that grows wilder each time it's repeated through each generation. He said it served well as war propaganda, but 40 years later, it is time to put that propaganda aside.
Besides the 15-month jail term, Zündel was ordered not to speak or write about the Holocaust for 3 years after his release.
He said all the things that needed to be said about the victims and how they were maligned. And I just don't know what else to say except thank God.
A message has been sent out to all the Zündels of this world, particularly in Canada, that the hatred and hate-mongering will not come cheap.
And there was mounting pressure for deportation.
We are going to begin tomorrow demanding that the government deport Ernst Zündel immediately.
Why do we need troublemakers here? He's not a Canadian citizen, so let him go back to where he came from.
Well, we told the truth, and it needed to be told, and we did it civilized, in a civilized manner, and I think we all did a good job.
Zündel immediately launched an appeal.
It's not the end. Dr. Faurisson had said to me, we can solve the mystery of the gas chambers in Auschwitz and all these other places if we find an American expert, because America is the only country that dispatches people with gas. Dr. Faurisson flew to Boston, met Fred Leuchter in the middle of my second trial. Leuchter believes in the Holocaust. He said he believes that there were all these gas chambers.
I think as every other American, and probably as everybody on the surface of this planet, I believe that there were I believe that there was a Holocaust. I believe that there was mass extermination.
I have a sample of the concrete from the alleged pillar that carried this hydrocyanic acid into the chamber. The pillar is solid and not hollow,